Hey, it was great seeing you yesterday. Tell you what, I'm just going to go through a basic pattern here on how I do visual chord triads of memorization tools using those three notes and then moving on to adding the superfluous note, which makes it something else, or as we learned the other day, two superfluous notes. How we have to build that triad with the seventh, dominant, ukulele, and then we add on top of that a ninth, 11th, or 13th. Meaning, if we have something like a G major, and we know how to play a G minor, both of those could have a seventh at it. So a G major 7, G minor 7. When we have, not G minor 7, but a minor 7, which makes it a G dominant 7. Sorry, still a major tonality, has a major third. When we do the G minor can also function that way. You can still move that down to an F sharp, so you would get, nice. That feels more of like a D flat augmented. However, that chord still is applicable. When we move that down one more step, we would have our G minor, moving that G down to F sharp, down to F. Well, that's characteristically of a G minor 7. And it feels weird because it has a major feeling to it. That's because our ear's not using it with the four notes to register. So what you will find out in each key, because the ook only has the four strings and not the other strings as a bass resonance, that you kind of get lost between the tonality. What I'm here to do is guide you and say, you know, when you play an E7 at the second fret as a bar chord or open like this, it functions as a diminish of another chord, because you hear how it would surprisingly go right back from that E7 to an A major. Well, that E7 is functioning as the G sharp diminish, the seventh tonality in an A major chord. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, and G sharp diminish. So when we play all of these, let's try and name them in the key of C. I'm going to scoot up a little bit so you can see my fingers. This is what you should do for your progress and see how many chords you can name just off the top of your head if you want. They're all over the internet. My channel specifies that's my niche. They're all on there, every single chord, and all the inversions. So I'm going to show a couple chords. Here's a C major. Here's a C major. Here's a C major. Here's a C major. Here's another C major. When you're watching this, that's the C minor. C minor could also be played by a bar chord and our finger on the fifth here. You could also move this note up here and play the minor shape here while leaving one. This is why we teeter-totter for a chord just like this. You could then move all those fingers, cover another thing, and put that right there. Or you could bar it like this. Sorry, my fingers aren't working this morning. Like there. Or you could turn that around. All of these are just inversions. They're all different level versions of what that same primary chord was. So when we go to a C and augment the fifth, we get a C augmented. Great chord for moving back and forth. Feels very vaudeville-y, doo-woppy-in. Second one, third fret, bar both in the middle and play the fifth. Gives you C's on top and it gives you both a flat sharp 5 and a 3. You can also play with all your fingers, no worries. Same thing again, if you bar just those and put your finger way up top here, you get another version of it. Hence, if you play that same note here and you move your fingers up, you get other versions. So the idea that we're going to be doing here is trying to move fluidly through these. Here's a C diminished. You can also put a pinky down here on the fifth if you want. I just generally don't play the high G. What's the next one? Fifth fret right here, and then make a, looks like a D, or I'm sorry, like a G, but it has an extended finger. So this would be A flat augmented, minus the G, sorry. So if you do that same thing up here by putting your finger down here, playing those two notes, skip that and play here on the eighth on the E string, you get that diminished chord. The concept behind this is each one of these tonalities can find itself being used with others in lieu of certain notes. Now, here's where it gets kind of heavy between you and me. Some chords are named other chords, that's fine. They're called enharmonic equivalences. The idea is when you have a C major and you make it an augmented chord, that means that you're fluidly going to that next note because it's quantum. You're writing the song. That's why you use it. When you call that same note an augmented fourth, which it's the same thing, flat 5, aug 4, it's the same note. The concept is you're using it in the context of just wanting to hear the augmented tonality. So if I had I'd be using that augmented sound just to give that chord an augmented thing. That dee, 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 those are just individual notations. 4 notes in a row. is called an X-cell, just if you want to know. So all of these chords, like a C5, would use just all the 5 notes. There is no third. C add 9 would just add the D note. There's different ways to play it. This is one of my favorites. 3rd fret. Got to admit it's getting better. Let's see here. When you do minor tonalities, some of these are kind of long-winded. However, they do have a lot of fun chords like a C sus4, resolves. We could also be playing stuff like C sus2s, which look the exact same, just up on different strings. This generally works for all inversions. So that's something that I remember constantly. C major 7. If you can find a C major 7 and do a D major 7, or a G major 7, or a major 7, or a F major 7, or a B flat major 7. So when we go through the process of seeing these, we're going to go over chords which aren't just your normal chords. We're going to be building such chords as the C11. And you'll say, wait a minute, well, isn't that the C9? I'll be like, yeah, but right here it's a C9. Right here it's a C11. Has all the same chords as the C9, except now it has the 11th instead of that 9th. And what we're going to talk about is the difference between add-on chords and chords that just naturally have that 7th there. So what I would say is pick one key, like I picked C here for the explanation. Pick one key and do an explanation to yourself. And then if you have any questions, jot them down. We'll talk about it next week, okay? Aloha.